Welcome to the March 25th episode of River Talk, the current events and political discussion podcast here at Clinton Community College. My name is Emily Legel, and I will be moderating today's panel. First, I'd like to introduce my panelists.
Jon Schluns,
Wendel,
Ryan Costello.
All students here at CCC. Today, we will be focusing on Israel. Last week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was re-elected by a narrow margin in the Israeli elections. Tensions between the United States and Israel are reaching a high point. Both President Barack Obama and Netanyahu have made clear their dislike for each other surrounding issues like nuclear negotiations with Iran and the advocacy for a Palestinian state, which Obama supports and Netanyahu opposes. Before we get into any of this discussion, however, I would just like to introduce our disclaimer. Any and all opinions said on this podcast are those of the individuals involved and not necessarily those of the Eastern Iowa Community Colleges or Clinton Community College.
Okay. And so did you have something to start with for us, just to get it?
Let's start with this map.
The map on the board is basically a map of the state of Israel. Where, in the area where the state of Israel is written is the Mediterranean Sea. Israel is a narrow strip surrounded by Syria to the north and Jordan to the east and Egypt to the south. I'm probably not getting my geography incorrect.
Well,
It's a very small state, and the area has been contested historically between the Ottomans and the Israelis. The Ottomans later did just turn into Palestinian state after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire during World War II. Since the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, Israel has been in turmoil. The Palestinians, the predominantly Muslim and Christian group who have lived there for centuries, argue that it's their land because they live there. However, after World War II, after the Holocaust, millions of Jews flooded to Israel, which was at the time controlled by Great Britain. And in 1948, this Jewish state of Israel was established and recognized by the United Nations. However, Palestinians still argue that it is their territory to own. They were there first. And since then, they have been advocating for the creation of an independent Palestinian state, with their capital centered on the Jewish capital of Israel. Both Jerusalem. Sorry.
You're taking up time.
Do you want?
yeah,
So this is where we'll start for today.
well, the map shows that the state of Israel. Currently, Israel occupies the Gaza Strip, West Bank, and had the Golan. I really drew it because it's irrelevant. That was conquered from Syria, now part of Israel. The Palestinians argue that this belongs to them, and that too. Many want a two-state solution, which we have a country of Palestine here and the state of Israel here. Okay.
However, the Israeli president refuses to negotiate, especially with the Palestinian government, especially since the Strip of Gaza, which along the banks of the Mediterranean, is occupied by a rebel group called Hamas, who does not recognize the state of Israel's right to exist. These tensions have escalated, and several negotiations for peace talks have failed because the Palestinians want their own state, and Israel opposes that. And the Palestinians do have many allies in the region. You guys want to start talking about that?
So there's other issues such as rockets being fired.
John, please sit down.
Okay.
Then we need to open it to Joe and Ryan.
Oh, okay. This issue is always going to be tough because you know, this has been going on for a long time. There's vehement difference in religious ideologies or theologies, and as well, you know, there's also, of course, money being involved, like everything else in any country on any planet, or I mean any country in the world. This problem has been going on really heavily, I believe, since the mid-'70s. And I mean, as far as violence and corruption and everything like that, the fact that they have voting and things like that in either one of the countries, I think, is rather dubious because of the manner in which they run their governments and who they have been throughout history and things like that. Any kind of voting or kind of democracy that they may be putting in place should be, you know, really closely examined, because I don't know whether or not it means a damn thing. And the problem here is that Israel is completely surrounded, outnumbered, maybe not outgunned. I know that the Israeli military is very powerful because obviously they've been backed by the U.S. for a long time, whereas Palestine and them have been backed by, you know, the Muslim-based countries around, and it's been a problem, a serious problem ever since the Iranian, I don't know if he's the president or prime minister or whatever, Ahmadinejad, but...
Who has since left office about a year ago.
Did he?
Yes, he
But
was replaced by a more moderate government.
Before that, well, I can't believe that is more moderate, because Iran is Iran and it's backed by the Muslim leaders who, when Ahmadinejad was like our president, he was more or less a puppet, and you got to follow the power behind him, the people that you don't see, which would be the Muslim leaders. But he was the good voice, you know, he was the excellent speaker, and every time that he spoke, he said that, you know, he was promising Iran and the rest of the, you know, anti-Semite world that he was going to destroy Israel. And, you know, ominously enough, that's, you know, I don't mean to bring it into another religion, but in the book of Revelations it says when the children of Israel are driven into the sea, Armageddon will come. And he continuously made threats against Israel. And I don't think that it's wrong that Israel starts to fire back and say, you know, you have a nuclear weapons program, and it's, you know, on the border of being legal or not according to the UN. You know, you're constantly threatening to completely wipe us out. You know, why can't we defend ourselves? Or even if you don't knock it off, we'll give you a certain amount of time. It's like talking 1, 2, 3 to a kid before putting them in timeout. So it's a really tough situation over there, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. What do you think?
Well, I actually have a question for you. Do you think that a Palestinian state will be formed before Iran gets a nuclear weapon?
No, I do not. I absolutely think that Iran probably does have some sort of primitive nuclear power right now, which, you know, the landmass right there, they could blast it if they wanted to. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, many of their nuclear warheads, which are primitive in today's you know, world, they were lost, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where the hell they went to. They went to the places that Russia got kicked out of, you know, because they had all the money from oil and everything.
I just have a little bit of a question about that. Iran keeps claiming that they have a peaceful program, and in the past they have allowed UN inspectors to come in and inspect their program. Don't you think it'd be wiser just to make some sort of peace with them so that we can have people in there constantly monitoring instead of having people say, oh, we hate you, we hate you, we hate you, because it seems like just...
We've already had those.
But the new administration has been seeming more willing to enter negotiations with the United States, which are due to wrap up by the end of this month.
Well, I hope that that's the case, but let's look at reality, okay? Iran has been just a powerful force in especially extreme Islamic ways and everything like that. People are not free in that country whatsoever. There is no any kind of democratic form in their country at all. They do terrible things to homosexual people and women and everything like that. So they are a primitive society, even if they have, technology for warfare or whatever. That does not make them right, and it does not make them not a liar, because it's like when. If Ahmadinejad was still in power and he went to the UN and said, okay, yes, I promise, I'm going to stop this right now. It would have been the same as between Hitler and, I believe, Churchill or whoever in England when they signed the peace treaty. Okay, I'm Hitler and I'm not going to take over any countries. He went right back and laughed at him.
It was Chamberlain, by the way.
Oh, Chamberlain, yes, that's right.
I think the word you're thinking is appeasement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the long run a bad idea. But we're talking it from hindsight. Like not everyone has that luxury to talk about these things. They might not have known that Hitler was going to invade Czechoslovakia. We don't know if Iran is going to use their nuclear weapons or not, which is kind of a good point since Iran had been acting erratically. They kind of have to act erratically so that they remain unpredictable, because as their enemies happen to be the United States, since we are the most powerful country on earth. They need to show that they have some threat to us, and the best way to do that is to act erratically.
Well, their nuclear program isn't really a threat to us so much as it's a threat to Israel, and because we've been backing Israel this whole time, if there was to be conflict, we would have to go in and fight another war, and then we don't know what would happen in there if we were to get into another quagmire like Iraq. So, from my perspective, I think that if we want to prevent Iran from using a nuclear weapon against Israel, there's going to have to be appeasement to some level, some negotiations. There's going to have to be a formation of a Palestinian state. Negotiations haven't been great with Iran in the past, but eventually they are going to get a nuclear, despite what we do, no matter how many sanctions as technology evolves, they will have a nuclear weapon. And if we don't do something to negotiate and dull down the level of intensity in this situation, they're going to use it against Israel.
Well, if you follow the blood trail, you'll see that the Muslim, backed countries that are really in the Sharia type, laws and everything, sees Israel as a definite threat, and they've always been anti-Semitic. And which means that no matter what they say, I believe that in their, in most of their people's hearts, through propaganda and through, foolish things like that, they honestly do believe that Israel is the worst thing that could happen. And it is, Israel has had a lot of problems with, Palestinian ideals, so it's like, and it's very strange that they're so close together. And nothing has been drawn up as far as different borders or as far as I know, really good negotiations between, like, okay, let's stop fighting, let's do this and that. This isn't the place of the world where that's going to happen. We're sitting here in America where we can speak out all we want, we can be who we want. They can't.
Well, I think that
Audrey, first of all, how many minutes do we have left?
6.
Okay. 2 questions. One, the United States, however loosely, is allying with Iran against the Islamic State in Iraq. What are your thoughts on that? And 2, what do you think of the letter sent by 47 U.S. senators, the open letter threatening more sanctions and a possible war sent earlier this month? It might have been last month.
I think what you were saying earlier is it's not political difference that separates them. It's an ideological difference.
Mhm.
And that any political things we make won't have any effect because it's not the source of the animosity.
Okay.
I think that what actually need to be done is kind of, we may want to lift some sanctions in order for more openness between America and Iran.
I was talking about the letter specifically.
Oh yeah.
So I like to just kind of go off what he was saying, that there's animosity between the two groups, between Israel and the Palestinians. And it doesn't help when Netanyahu, who's running for election, goes on the news and says, how dare the left-wing parties drive these Muslim voters to the voting block so they can vote, which, okay, the left-wing party shouldn't have drove them there, but the way he made it sound seemed like he was discriminating against the Muslim population inside Israel, and that's not helping anything. And when you come to he was invited here, and you come here and you shoot down negotiations that the president and previous presidents have been working on for years, that it doesn't help the situation when you see the two powers that Iran is negotiating with fighting each other. And then, if we want to talk about the letter, the Democrats did this in 2007 when Bush said, don't talk to al-Assad from Syria. He may become a problem in the future. And Nancy Pelosi invited Bashir al-Assad here and talked to him, and now we know he's done terrible things. He's committed crimes against humanity. I think it's like over 300,000 Syrians dead now. So this has happened before on both sides of the parties, and they both say, "Oh, this is treason versus the president."
But
The president has publicly snubbed a few times.
Was Bush? Oh, I just have a question about that. Was Bush negotiating with Syria at the time?
Bush was not negotiating,
I
but he
think
had said
that's what would make it different. That's what people are saying. It's different. I mean,
it wasn't because he didn't want to. It's because he said we aren't in the right situation to negotiate right now. He didn't want to.
I didn't know about that.
Don't you think that, U.S. Senate and everything is kind of non sequitur dealing with these problems
Well, you think they would
overseas,
respect the
for
wishes.
lack of, better comment or phrase? What the problem is that the UN needs to grow a pair and take care of what they're supposed to do. They have frequently fallen on their face on issues like this, and everybody's worried about what America will do. If you don't want America to be a police state, then stop us having to go in and clean up what the UN does not do.
Well, and that's the
But
problem, is that
there's
we
Iran.
are the UN. The US is always, what is the US going to do? 'Cause
Well,
we
Russia
have-
and China.
But there's
I think
people
one of
closer.
them-
I mean, there's Europe right there.
No, they should take
Well, yeah,
responsibility.
Russia and
But then
China-
they take care of their own problem.
UN
Russia and
Security
China
Council.
have veto power. They can,
Russia, China, and the United States all have veto power.
and some of them can trade with Iran. So they're always going to vote negative to a lot of these things. So nothing
Yeah.
will happen.
So it's not necessarily just the theoretical
It's
UN.
just nobody has any power
yes,
to do
we have
anything.
veto power, but so do several other countries.
Yes, and they don't do anything about it. So in my closing statement, I think that this situation is going to get a lot worse before it gets better because of the people involved and the theologies and the sanctions and the whole relationship that they have between each other is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Unless somebody else grows some balls and goes over there and does something extreme to make it one way or the other.
My final statement would be that if you have a president working on a negotiation to save millions of lives by having someone not use a nuclear weapon, you shouldn't write a letter to an already somewhat opposed individual heads of a country saying, quote, the next president could revoke such agreement with the stroke of a pen, and future Congresses could modify the terms of the agreement at any time. As well as saying, quote, President Obama will leave office in January 2017, while most of us will remain in office well beyond then, perhaps decades. That's a mockery of our democracy, I think.
John, do you have
Well,
any?
that's saying.
Yeah, I think that.
They're representing the view of the many. The president's representing his own view. So it's kind of definition of
Well,
democracy.
everyone votes for the president, not everyone votes for senators.
Well, I think that we need to stop demonizing everyone, and that we should need to have more understanding. And I think that's the biggest issue, is demonization.
Okay, thank you all for serving on the panel. I just want to also thank Steve Arlene for sitting in as our faculty advisor, Jamie, Justin, and Aaron for being audience members, Justin for participating, and then again Audrey Simpson for running the camera. I think we've had some really good discussions. I don't know if we got anywhere, but we did, even though we did kind of transition from Israel to Iran. Again, my name is